leadership can be a practice for how you show up, how you contribute, and how you make real the dreams and the ideas and the possibilities that you have for these very important areas of your life.
Welcome to the Smart Talk series, the show for professionals who want strategies, tips, and real talk about all things PR, marketing, and social media. Your host is Melissa Vela-Williamson, an award-winning, accredited, and nationally recognized PR pro and communication thought leader. And now your host, Melissa Vela-Williamson.
Hello and welcome to the Smart Talk series. I'm Melissa Vela-Williamson. This season, our focus is on valuing advice and taking action. Today, I'm joined by Laura Saldivar Luna. Laura Saldivar Luna is a wife, mom, and the founder and CEO of Piñata Possible, a transformational coaching practice that helps purpose-driven leaders unlock breakthroughs in their inner leadership and external impact. Before stepping into entrepreneurship, Laura spent nearly 20 years with Teach for America, serving as a classroom teacher, as an executive director, and as the organization's chief people officer. Her work is rooted in the belief that when leaders liberate their full expression, they expand their clarity, joy, power, and impact. Welcome, Laura.
Oh, hello, Melissa. I'm so happy to be in this conversation with you.
Work moves fast. Every email, report, and proposal counts. That's where Grammarly comes in. It's your one place to think, write, and finish. Grammarly's AI agents help you find natural phrasing, fine-tuned tone, and confidently write wherever you work. It's the premier writing tool that 93% of users trust to get more work done. In a world of generic AI, don't sound like everyone else. With Grammarly, you never will. Download Grammarly for free at Grammarly.com.
Oh, I'm so grateful you joined me, and I'm so happy for our listeners to get to know you. So tell us more about your background and your professional focus today.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So, my background is I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, born and raised. I began my career as an educator. I worked for a very long time for the education nonprofit Teach for America, first as a classroom teacher, and then I became a founding executive director for the organization here in my hometown of San Antonio. And then from there was promoted to be the organization's chief people officer. So I led all of our HR and human capital work, and all throughout my career, I was really focused on human potential and how to create the conditions for human beings to truly thrive and be who they really are, fully expressed, and giving all of the gifts that are within them. And so when I concluded my career in education, I asked myself, how can I use everything that I've learned about leadership development and education and holding space for people to grow and contribute that in a way that makes a positive difference in this world? And so I decided that instead of going into another organization, I would start my own. And that is how I became the founder of Piñata Possible, which is my leadership development and coaching practice that focuses on helping leaders break through to unprecedented possibilities in their lives and in their leadership. So that's the work I'm focused on now, which is all still at its core focused on helping human beings thrive and be who they are meant to be in this world.
I love that. And I love that you've done this work from kindergarten on up because that is the goal of education, right? That is the goal. I think all teachers who really care about students and their profession walk into this with is I want to help you be the best you. And I can appreciate you doing it from that vantage point and then helping the teachers be the best teachers they could be and kind of training the trainer model and then moving on to coaching at that individual leadership level. I think it's a fantastic journey. And I love how every one of those points really intersected and touched the other, right? Real stepping stones. And of course, I love how you talk about persevering towards goals through the piñata metaphor. I heard you on another podcast. Our colleague Eddie Aldrete had you on a while back, and I really appreciated one, your like natural verve and enthusiasm, but also that calmness you had with it, which was, I think, a unique gift that you have, Laura. And I also appreciated the visual that came right to my mind of whacking and whacking and whacking towards the goal of that break, right? The breakthrough, the candy, the outcome, which we all want as kids for sure. during parties and birthday parties, but I think that it's such a tangible image for people to think about when you talk about persevering. So tell us the story behind that and the Piñata Possible framework you mentioned.
Yeah. Thank you so much for mirroring back to me too, just what it meant for you to hear the metaphor and how it landed for you and came alive for you. So, one thing I should say first about my career in education is that I started off as a teacher of English, and English is a second language. And so I worked primarily with Spanish speaking students as they were learning a new language. And it was really, really beautiful to hold that kind of learning space for them because I've always been a student of language and how do we use language to make the inner thoughts we have really come alive? How do we translate what's within us out into the external world to be in conversation and to be in relationship with others and to bring those ideas to life? And so, in teaching English and in teaching English as a second language, having images to bring life to language really, really matters. And so the piñata metaphor has been with me for a very, very long time. It's always been traveling alongside me in my own
Mhm.
leadership journey as a symbol of an image of my core belief about people, which is that every single human being has within them infinite goodness, infinite gifts, infinite power and potential. And when we can be fully expressed in giving those gifts, in sharing what's within us with the rest of the world, not only do we get to live a fully expressed, authentic version of our life, then the rest of the community also gets to benefit from us giving the goodness that is within us. And so the piñata metaphor and everything it stands for about how people come together in circle, about how there are moments of cycling through action, about how there are cracks we put into something to make way for what needs to emerge to emerge, for the ways we need to take rest and evaluate the situation and see how we need to hit things from a different angle. All those little elements that are such a core part of how we have experienced moments of celebration in our own lives, in our own culture, it translates into leadership for how we as leaders show up in the world to be committed to the goals that motivate us, to go for the things that really matter, to cycle through what we need to cycle through to achieve the biggest breakthroughs in our lives, in ourselves, and in the missions that we serve, the organizations that we lead, and the initiatives that we caretake.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you and I had a chance to meet in person, we were talking about all of this. I remember sharing that I've been asked a lot of different questions, particularly since I became an author. And I have told people, really, I'm not special in any unique way that you can't be, because my special power seems to be the power of perseverance. That I
Mhm.
try and I try and I try, and if I care enough, I'll try again and again and again. And so that's why that metaphor landed so well with me, is I can just kind of hear it and I can see it and I can imagine it. But truly the exhaustion that can come with
Yeah.
whacking and trying, you hope you get to that point where there is that breakthrough. And I think most things in life, if you're committed to it and you do that very boring discipline work that it takes to make the efforts and changes and iterations that are needed to accomplish a goal, like, you will get to that breakthrough. And so I love that. And then the imagery of color and happiness, and of course, candy. Let's go.
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
there for it. Let's go, Laura. And I do appreciate how the beginning of your career is really focused on more of that beginning of life education that we have. And of course, I think those of us who are called to lead understand that it has to be a continuous journey in terms of getting education and evolving as people. And you
Mhm.
spoke a little bit about how the role of teaching ESL, how that made an impression, but what else did you learn from the roles and experiences that you learned as a teacher or through Teach from America that really apply to work today?
Yes. Well, I had the tremendous privilege of being a teacher in the Rio Grande Valley. And so I taught in a small rural town on the US Mexico border called Rio Grande City. And this place is so special to me and was so special to me because I was immersed in one of the most loving and supportive communities that I've ever had the privilege of being a part of. There was so much warmth, there was so much love, there was so much care all around me. And the community was so small and so close knit that no matter where I went in town, whether it was to the HEB or to the mechanic or wherever, I always saw the people that I knew. And I just felt this closeness to my community. And one of the things that I experienced in living on the US Mexico border is this new language myself, this powerful language of existing in the space in between. You know, Gloria Anzaldúa talks a lot about this, about not being from here, not being from there, being from the space in between, being of both worlds. She talks about this beautiful concept of Nepantla, where you are really existing and thriving in the space in between. And I saw that in the lives of my students. Many of them would even cross the border to come to class every single day. Many of them had family on both sides of the border. So there was always this back and forth in the community. There was this back and forth in two cultures, two languages. And so being able to hold both and the space in between as a place of thriving for me has totally shaped how I see my life, how I see my leadership, how I see the potential and the power in others. Because in today's world, oftentimes people default unintentionally to an either or mindset. They default to this, how do I survive? It's all black and white. It's all yes, no. It's this or that. And to be able to step back and say, well, what about the space in between? Because the space in between holds infinite combinations of possibility of blending what can sometimes feel like two totally different polarities. And I saw and experienced that living on the border. It's something that I carry with me and I try to honor in all the ways that I express the power of a both and orientation to life.
I really appreciate that. I feel like even as we age, right, there's certain stages and understandings around, being, of course, a baby. And then what does that mean to be a toddler? And what does it mean to be a little kid? And then there's big kid language and there's adolescent. I'm really interested in this middle age section of life because I want to age well. Those who may follow me understand I'm a little obsessed with doing it in a happy, healthy way. And so I've been listening to and reading Chip Conley, and he coined a term about midolescence, and it's about that in between stage, right? Where you're not a young adult or maybe even childbearing age in some ways, but you're not exactly right, sitting on the porch in a rocker and done with life. There's a lot of life in between. And so I really appreciate that. Personally, when I think through lived experiences and how we even regard ourselves aging, then we think about it professionally too. You're right. It's either or. I hear a lot of educators, a lot of teachers who feel very stuck. Like they don't have choice beyond teaching traditionally in the classroom. And you're a great illustration of, well, there's a lot of ways you can transfer those skills and use it in a many different professional aspects. So that multifaceted in between experience, I think, I want to validate that I think that's really important for people to be open to because, yeah, especially in public relations, there's a whole lot of gray. And being able to really sift through that and sit with it sometimes and experience it can be challenging. And on the flip side, beyond either or, sometimes I hear people get stuck personally or professionally because they say, I'm just a this or I'm just a that. And no one of us is just any one part of our identity or piece of our story. So I really like that you are supporting that with the work you do.
Thank you so much. Yes, I really do find that when people find their way into coaching, it's often because they're experiencing the very stuckness you're mentioning. They feel like they don't have a choice. They feel constrained or limited in some way. The results they're having in life feel misaligned with the results they want to be having in life. And sometimes people very much are in this space in between. They're standing at a threshold and they're like, well, I know I can't go back to where I was, but I'm not sure what's ahead. And here I am at this place in between. And it feels scary because it feels like the rest that's about to unfold is all in the unknown. And the unknown for us may occur like a place of risk, like a place to fear, like a place that's going to pose a threat. And so the more we can settle into to the recognition, like you're saying, all of life is a journey of the space in between. And we can learn and cultivate in our leadership the ways to thrive in the space in between, to honor the journey as we're making it, so that as we do reach all of those milestones and destination points, it's not just about arriving, it's about enjoying every step we're making, learning along every step we're making in the pathway there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it sounds like your advice would be helpful to all kinds of people in all kinds of situations because a lot of us, especially I would say now in 2026, are pretty clear in understanding that we don't know what all can come and we can't control everything. So we have to control the controllables. And part of that makes us feel like we want to make the best choice possible. So I really value what you're offering us in this conversation. And then the clients that you serve, like you said, a lot come to you when they feel stuck or they need to make a move and they're not sure what to do. But is there any other way to kind of illustrate what kind of clients you tend to serve, or you find the different types of people that are attracted to your work or reach out for advice and get help from a coach like you?
Absolutely. Well, there are lots of different types of coaches and coaching out there. And I consider myself and the work that I'm doing with Piñata Possible to be in the arena of leadership coaching. And when I say leadership coaching, what I mean by that is leadership as a practice in life of cultivating the best of what's within you so that you can then cultivate the best of what's possible in everything you interact with in the rest of the world. So, the best of what's within you to bring out the best quality relationships, the best quality impact for the organization that you lead and serve, the best impact for the organizations that you are a part of forwarding and supporting and community initiatives, whatever it is that you are dedicating your life towards. Leadership can be a practice for how you show up, how you contribute, and how you make real the dreams and the ideas and the possibilities that you have for these very important areas of your life. And so, as a leadership coach, I am working primarily with leaders who are up to something big and bold in the world. They are seeking some sort of positive social good for themselves, for their communities, for the organizations that they lead. And they are often finding themselves at this threshold moment where they know more is possible, but they feel some sort of stuckness. They are running up against some kind of wall where things are starting to feel unworkable or impossible. I often refer to this as a breakdown moment where you're throwing everything you have at the problem. You're throwing everything you have to change your results, everything better, harder, faster in with all the skills that you've learned, and it's still not working. And so what you're really in need of, what leaders are in need of in those threshold moments is to reshape and reframe how they are orienting to themselves as a source of possibility, their futures as a sort of as a source of possibility, because what you're then in the arena of doing is building into the possible from things that have in the past been impossible. And so that can feel really scary. It can feel very disorienting for leaders who are trying to step into this new terrain. And so the working with a coach can be very vital to hold space for people to break down the old ways and break through to the new ways. Hence this metaphor again of the piñata. We oftentimes feel like we're just trying to hold ourselves together and patch up our own little cracks and pretend like we have it all together and nothing's wrong and nothing's falling apart, when meanwhile we're feeling disoriented and feeling like the old ways, the old form is no longer serving us. And I really like to orient to those cracks that we're feeling as the sign that what's emerging and coming forward is the next level. And we are outgrowing the previous form. We can honor the form that we had before. We can respect everything that it has done to serve and teach us and bring us to the now. And we don't have to be limited by it. We can transcend that form, move into a new and expanded form of expression in who we are as leaders. So oftentimes the clients I'm working with, as I mentioned, are leaders. They're at these threshold moments. They know and are hungering for something more. They're not quite sure how to get there. It feels impossible. And the work we're doing is in the arena of building possibility, building breakthroughs, and letting the new future and the new versions of themselves emerge.
I, ugh. I'm getting all wound up over here going, yes, but, and I'm sure you hear a lot of that, Laura. It's painful. Transformation is painful, isn't it, Laura? It can it be a good pain. Growth is pain, I think, in a lot of ways, right? But I know just having done a lot of this work in my life in a lot of different avenues and ways that I also want to honor that for people is that you can get very excited and hopefully and I love your energy, Laura, because it's so positive around it, the possibilities. But I also want to give some grace in that if you're listening and you feel uncomfortable with those ideas of change and what's new and what now, that also is relatable. And it's probably part of the journey, right, Laura?
100%. And I would say to you, Melissa, and to anyone who is having that kind of reaction of, yes, but, if you are feeling a yes, but orientation to change and the unknown and transformation, I would say, good job. You are human because as human beings, our brains are pattern making machines that love familiarity. They love the comfort of familiarity. And so anything that feels new and different and outside of the familiar is going to occur first to our nervous system and to our brains as a threat, as a risk, as a disruption. So when a leader has a visceral reaction to the idea of changing, to the idea of transformation, and it feels like everything is falling apart and it feels risky and it feels scary, that is a very human experience. It's very normal. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm often trying to spread this message to leaders that there is nothing wrong with you because you're scared. There's nothing wrong with you because the growth feels uncomfortable. That's actually a sign that the work ahead of us is to hold space for the discomfort, hold space for the fear, allow you to be with that and process through it, and allow your nervous system to regulate itself back to a place where it can then restore its own power and choice and agency, regardless of the fear and the circumstances you're navigating, so that you can take those powerful steps forward. And I think this is, again, why coaching can be so vital, because sometimes when we're trying to do that reset or that regulation ourselves, it can feel scary and overwhelming and isolating, and we feel alone and we feel like we're the problem. Whereas when we're being held in a safe and supportive conversation and container, we can then allow all of that messiness to come forward. Similar to like when the caterpillar is in the
Mhm.
chrysalis, it's all messy, it's all gooey in there. Yet what's happening is the forming and reforming of cells to generate a new form. And so it's the same for us to be held in a safe and supportive container so that we can allow ourselves to be messy enough, move through what we need to move through to then guide ourselves into what's already here waiting to emerge within us.
Absolutely. And I want to remind leaders of all shapes and forms is that the messy is what people relate to. It's not the perfect
100%.
image, right? It's not the perfect microphone moment that you may have, but it's when you're sharing, hey, this is uncomfortable and I'm working
Absolutely.
through it. And here's how I'm doing that. I think that's people relate to that. I know I do, right? Because as I'm looking through
Absolutely.
some gray myself, I'm like, okay, I'm heading into a new space or a new level. And while that can be exciting, it can be lonely. And so I appreciate what you do as a coach there, Laura.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah,
Thanks. Yes. Let go of the perfection and step into the practice is often what I remind myself of because, like we said, the magic is happening in the space in between and the discomfort that happens there as we're navigating between two worlds. Like, essentially, we are becoming a bridge to something new. And I really do view my work and support of clients to be that, to help them bridge to the new world that they want to create.
yes. And then you can bring so many across with you. I love that.
Hmm.
So from that viewpoint, Laura, what does help your clients and or we talked about fear and preventing people when they're having that visceral reaction, like I even express myself, that can stop people from taking action on their goals or I'll be candid. A lot of times I talk about culturally, sometimes you don't have the support that you hear you're
Hmm.
supposed to have within your network or your families, and that becomes a barrier. But what do you find helps people break through fears, barriers, whether it's self-imposed or external from themselves?
Absolutely. That's such a great question. And it, Speaking to your area of expertise around PR, one of the things that I notice in working with leaders is something that really works is helping get clear on the story that's currently running in the background of a leader's identity and mindset, because that story that's running can be a story that fuels power. It can also be a story that fuels limitation. And so the more conscious and aware we as leaders can become of the stories that are surrounding us and swirling around us and the stories that are swirling within us, the more we can pause and get clear about the story we want to be telling about ourselves, about our circumstances, about our choices, about the world around us. And that restores a sense of power to a leader when we aren't just in the default story that the world hands us. We're not just in the default story that our nervous system and our survival instincts hand us. We are able to architect the story that is aligned to who we want to be in the world, what we want to create, what we're committed to, the things we value, how we want to strengthen community, etc. And I do find, speaking from a culturally responsive lens, that we are often carrying within us inherited legacies, inherited assets, inherited burdens that take the shape of narratives and stories. And so, depending on what we've lived through, those valuable lived experiences, depending on what our ancestors and our lineage have lived through, there has been so much that our ancestors have done over generations to survive, to bring us to the moment of existing today. And sometimes those survival instincts, which were so valuable in allowing us to exist, are actually now a source of limitation because they might be perpetuating some stories that no longer serve us. So, maybe there was a past experience for our ancestors where it was not always safe to express a true opinion that we hold. Well, now, how can we acknowledge that that might be part of the lived experiences of our lineage, but not be limited, still have as a choice, well, what would I like to express? What would feel authentic and aligned for me to share out loud before I just default to assuming that holding my opinion within is the only option I have? So I think from a cultural perspective, the more we can increase our consciousness and awareness of the stories that are running in the background of our own minds, the stories that are running in the background of our own nervous systems, and the stories that are swirling around us, conditioning us to believe we need to be a certain way. When we get conscious about that, we can then restore our choice to say, hold on, what's the story I want to create? What's the story I want to author? Because then I'm restoring my authority in the matter, and I can then again step into the leadership of my own life.
Yeah, I love that proactive, strategic view on our self-work, driving our own. When I do media training, I call it the story bus, right? You need to drive the story bus.
Mm.
And driving our own story bus, or like getting somewhere on purpose and understanding that there may be these scripts and these narratives that in history were passed down or even presently may be emerging and popping up, but unless you're connected to that and you have some kind of relationship with that story, like you can write your own, right? And you, like you said, Laura, you may have a past experience or role or identity marker that you need to change or evolve from, and that's closing a chapter and you write a new one. And I love that power that it puts back in people's hands, everyday people, to say, hey, you can design the life that you want and you love, and you really only get this chance to. So go for it. And I love that. And
Right,
I
right.
and that journey is always easier for us to say from the outside, but I think that is the opportunity you have as someone who may work with a coach, is that a lot of times we can't see why we're not progressing, right? It's like working with an athletic coach, oh, you're not
Mhm.
noticing as a athlete that maybe all of a sudden you're making this funny little move with your arm or you're twisting this way or that way, and that's why you're not being effective. And then when it comes to some of our leadership aspirations, or professional or even personal, we may not notice that because we're inside the work every day. We may not see externally where we're missing. So I appreciate that very much.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yes, I do find that the work of coaching The way I oriented coaching is always in a way that honors and supports the wisdom of the lived experiences that are within the leader that I'm supporting. And so my work as a coach is to hold the space, offer the questions, hold up that mirror with a lot of love, care, and supportive accountability so that the leader can see and have reflected back to them their own wisdom, their own words, their own knowing. Because my belief is that the clarity and the answers to the questions that leaders are asking is already there within them. We just need to clear away that internal noise. We need to clear away the mindsets that feel limiting. We need to clear away wherever there are the yes buts that are causing people to say, I want that, but I feel like I need to cut off the possibility. We begin to reshape that into a yes and, yes, it may be hard and challenging, and I'm still going to choose this direction. So we can bring forth an energy of expansion when that survival instinct kicks in and says, no, let's guard ourselves, let's protect, let's pull back. That can be very, very valuable. We can recognize how that instinct serves us while at the same time recognizing that's not our only option. We can see that the yes but comes in to protect us and serve us and make us aware of important things we need to notice. We can have that reflected back to us. And then we can say, okay, given that truth, given that reality, now what? Now, who do I want to be? What do I want to create? And that again restores our sense of power. So we don't need to be limited based on only what was, only what history has shown us. We can be part of authoring the next chapter of history.
Yeah, absolutely. And you shared some good insights here on how you view the work and approach the work as a coach. But in this season, we're really going into valuing advice and taking action with it. So I want to dig a little deeper on those two aspects as we finish our conversation. So, what do you wish professionals knew about working with a coach? Maybe there's some myths out there or something that you would love to just put on the table to clear up so that people can understand the value of coaching.
Yes, I think sometimes people feel that coaching is something you do when something's wrong, when you're not good at your job, when you're not good enough, when you're experiencing problems that need to be fixed. And I believe that coaching is something that supports your next level, whatever that next level may be. And here's the truth of the matter: everybody has a next level. Everybody, no matter how much success you've had, no matter how much failure you've had, we're all a mixture of both, right? And all have taught us wise lessons. There's always a next level that we can take those lived experiences and ascend to if we're willing to take a look at what we've learned, where we are, where we want to go, and what the path forward might look like. And so coaching is not something for people who are ineffective, for people who have nothing but problems to solve. Coaching can be for people to step into their next level, and there's always a next level possible. So I find that people who are high achievers, people who have incredible ambition, who've accomplished so much, are often the ones that are seeking out coaching because they know there's more left for them to discover, for them to uncover in their life and leadership. And yet they feel stuck. So they come in with a story of something's wrong with me. I'm not a good leader. I'm not good enough. And so the moment we can clear away that story has shown up, we can honor it, but it doesn't have to be the truth that defines us. We just need to move to the next level. There's a ton of power that can be built in that way. So I would hope that people would know there's nothing wrong with you. Coaching is for everyone. And if it's calling to you, listen to the whispers of that call, because oftentimes it calls when there's a new level that's trying to peek through and it's ready to emerge.
Yeah, and working with a coach in that proactive, positive manner, I think is just such a healthy thing to do. It's such a healthy way to move forward to that next level with a little more support and advisement and insight, which we all know helps us do things more effectively. It saves time, it saves money, it saves emotional bandwidth. And as a leader, you have to have so much of it for yourself to move forward, to share vision, to move people, to follow you. I know that personally, so I love that extra support and encouragement that you can get from coaches like you, Laura, to say, "Hey, you're not wrong, right? This is hard." And your feelings are validated. And sometimes when your feelings are validated, it just means so much to you.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right. I would also invite people to know and to honor that it's okay if you're feeling confused. Transformation can feel very disorienting and very uncomfortable. And so many of my clients come to me feeling totally confused. They're like, I've done a lot of successful things. I know it's possible, but something just feels totally off right now. And I would say to welcome and honor that. Sometimes coaching calls to us and we don't know exactly what's the thing we're trying to unlock, what's the breakthrough that's here for me. It needs to be a bit more emergent. So whether you are hearing the whispers of coaching calling and it seems like there's a very clear goal, great. If you're hearing the whispers calling, you're like, I don't know what's out there, but it's something, that's great too. Both are welcome and both are beautiful places to start.
I absolutely agree. Sometimes my best ideas brew like that or percolate for and are called to me for a good amount of time. I've
Hmm.
had my latest passion project, Ask a Latina, was an idea that came to me over a year and a half ago. It just wasn't very clear what I was to do with this inspiration.
Hmm.
And sometimes it takes time, but I think, like you said, if I had an advisor to kind of talk through with it, it may have come faster, right? I may have saved some time and some heartache because sometimes when you have a calling, it aches. I know for me, it does feel very visceral. It does feel like,
Yeah.
I'm being pulled somewhere and not knowing where I'm going. As someone who is looked to as a strategic advisor and counselor, it is unsettling. So I appreciate how you just mentioned that, put that on the table so that people can understand that it's part of the experience that can be worked through for sure.
Yeah. Part of the human experience as you're alluding to here, Melissa, is that there can be a ton of emotion that travels with us when we are
Yeah.
navigating transformation. And I think there are lots of times where we as leaders suppress our own emotions. We feel that our emotions are counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish. And so over time, we learn to override that wisdom that's coming through our body, that wisdom that's coming through our emotions, because we feel like it's just getting in the way and it's distracting. And over time, if we override and ignore it enough, it starts getting louder and louder and louder and can manifest oftentimes as pain in the body, as stress in the body, as overwhelm. So, all those sensations compounded over time, when not attended to, will just continue to get louder and get stronger. The moment, though, that we start to invite in a practice of acknowledging that emotion, acknowledging the sensations in our body, acknowledging that they're here, and we listen for the wisdom they're traveling with, we can then allow them to move through us in a much more expedient fashion. And I think this is something I wish more leaders knew, that if you hold enough space to allow those emotions and sensations to move through you, you're going to be able to get yourself back in the game much faster than if you try to just suppress, override, and pretend like you're not having a visceral reaction or an emotional reaction. And so, learning how to work with our emotions, not from them, learning how to work with them is again a source of powerful leadership practice. I find with many of my high achieving clients that it's just a time to make space for those things that haven't been witnessed and heard.
Absolutely, because from a public relations perspective, we have seen leaders who just kind of pop. They kind of blow up
Right?
because they were bottling up emotions or situations and secrets that just at some point, right, just overwhelm the
Right.
body and overwhelm, the scenario. So I honor that in a lot of different ways. And Laura, I want to ask you a little bit about culture too, because I know that I infuse my understanding of cultural strategy with public relations and marketing communications because how we prefer to be seen and live as people does impact what we say and do and how we should be communicated with and
Mhm.
to. And so, in terms of coaching, what kind of cultural differences do you see impacting how people if they reach out for help, if they don't, or how maybe they work with a coach?
Yes. I work with leaders of all different identities and backgrounds, and I also have found over time that many Latina leaders find their way to working with me. Many women find their way to working with me. Many leaders of color find their way to working with me. And I think that's due in part to the fact that people are yearning for a coaching relationship where they can be fully expressed in their full identity. And when there can be a sense of connection in identity or even permission to bring your full identity into the conversation, it can be a very liberating experience in a coaching journey. And so, one of the things I have found in working with leaders who identify in some way as coming from a group that historically has been marginalized or excluded. So think, women, think people of color, think like any leader that is coming from that kind of identity background is oftentimes traveling with, as we mentioned before, some of those inherited stories, inherited narratives, the sense of conditioned beliefs about who they should be and how they show up in the world. And they're often traveling with lived experiences of not always feeling safe to be who they really are, whether that is from past generations, whether that's from their own personal lived experiences. So, when we in a coaching relationship or in a leadership development experience can hold space for safety and belonging to be restored for the leader, then it opens up the permission to be more fully expressed in their true thoughts, their true emotions, their true desires. So, I'll give you a specific example of this. One of the questions that I often start with my clients is, what do you really, really want? Now, this question, while it sounds simple, is actually very confronting to a lot of leaders, particularly leaders who come from a historically excluded group. And that is because it has not always been safe or welcome or normal to
Mm.
ask the question of what we really, really want. We instead ask different questions. What's going to be practical? What's going to be safe? What's going to be acceptable? What's going to be of benefit and service to others? What's within my means and the resources I have? We ask different questions, which are not bad questions. They're not wrong questions. They're just not the question of what do you really, really want? And so when I'm holding a space for a leader to be with that question, for many leaders, it often feels like it's the first time they're getting to ask that. And it feels scary to answer. They're not quite sure what the answers are. So then that becomes confronting. I don't know feels confronting. So, how can we, again, from a cultural perspective, honor that not knowing in our past experiences and past ancestral wisdom perhaps was a threatening thing? It was a threatening thing to not know how to navigate a tense situation, to not know where your resources were going to come from, to not know if the next step was going to be safe. So, little by little in these coaching conversations, how do we make it even safer, just a little bit safer for people to step to that edge and tap into, again, what's really there for them and their true desires, their true experiences, their true needs, and the places that feel unresolved and unmet within them so that they can then be in the practice of creating how they can serve those needs and honor those dreams and desires and move forward. Even if it's never going to feel 100% safe, how can you restore the safety within you to feel stable and supported enough to still take the next courageous step?
Yeah, that's a very, very important process that you manage, Laura, because I would say even as a leader, it probably doesn't even feel safe to say you don't know what you
Right.
want. You're expected to know. You wouldn't be in that role
Right.
if you didn't have vision and mission and commitments and are the one who people can come to, right? And knows what to do. And
Right.
so I love that in some ways it feels like, and I want to be careful and honor all the professions, but it does feel like professional therapy in some ways because it's like saying, I yeah, let me explore this. Because sometimes you add just one word to it and it changes the whole dynamic. Like, what do you really want now?
Yes.
Because maybe we figured out what we really wanted or we knew for a certain amount of time, but seasons have changed, our life has changed, environment
Right.
has changed, and now maybe I want something a little different.
That's right. That's
And
right. It's a question to come back to
yeah,
over and over again. Exactly.
I love it. I love it. Well, I can't wait to walk and talk with you and talk about now because that's going to be something on my mind and heart always. What do I really want? What I really want now? And that's
Mhm.
very powerful to really think about. Well, Laura, we could talk all day, but I know I need to wrap it up so that more of our listeners can connect with you. So I want to ask you two final questions I ask all my guests.
Mhm.
What does smart talk mean to you, Laura?
Mm. Smart talk means to me realizing that you always have the power to choose how you speak to yourself and how you listen to yourself so that you can then choose how you speak to and listen to the world around you.
Ooh, so well said. So thoughtfully said. Thank you. And then, Laura, I know you'll have a lot of new fans from this conversation and hopefully some new potential clients to support as they go through their journey. So, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
Well, I would be so delighted to connect with anyone that wants to connect. So thank you for that invitation, Melissa. People can find me at piñatapossible.com. You can also find me on Instagram at Piñata Possible and on LinkedIn under my name, Lara Saldivar Luna. And I would love and cherish any new connection that comes from someone finding me through this podcast, because Melissa, that is how we found each other,
Yeah.
was through a podcast. And beautiful connection got built as a result of that, beautiful walks and talks. And I'm so delighted by any new human being that I get to cross paths with, because then I can see the magic and the power and the potential in that leader and what they're creating. And I certainly count you among those incredible leaders who are building wonderful things for our world and for our community.
Well, thank you, Laura. And thank you for what you do because I will underline and honor that it is scary and lonely, and professionals like you and colleagues and friends like you who can encourage us and support us along the way are just invaluable. So thank you so much for your work and for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was such a pleasure and a joy.
Thanks to our listeners for joining me for today's episode. We love covering communication topics that elevate our industry practice. If you'd like to go deeper, you can work with me as a coach, trainer, consultant, or hire my firm, MVW Communications, for strategic communication and public relations services. My industry books, Smart Talk Public Relations Essentials All Pros Should Know, and Latinas in Public Relations, Shaping Communications, Communities, and Culture, are also available for purchase on Amazon. Grab your copy there and please leave us a supportive review. Book reviews and podcast reviews help more aspiring or hardworking pros find our resources. As always, think smart and communicate smart. And I'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Smart Talk series. If you learned something or enjoyed our conversation, share it on social media or send to a friend. To learn more about this and other communication topics, visit mvw360.com. That's mvw360.com.